What do you feel when you hear the word mom for someone? These are warm memories, joyful moments of life, and perhaps the closest person. The woman, who will be discussed today, smiled at the neighbors, took care of the children, and sang them lullabies at night. In 10 minutes, you will be horrified by what has been done to them. What happened in this terrible story, and how did one child manage to stay alive, and what did he tell the investigators? Let's find out all the terrible details of this case. Before the start of the video, I ask you to like not a terrible story, but for my work. Also, do not forget to subscribe to the channel so as not to miss new videos, and write your opinion in the comments. In the quiet provincial Kansk of the Krasnoyarsk territory, the Mitko family led a secluded lifestyle. 29-year-old Valentina, a mother of 4 children, and her husband Vladimir avoided close communication with neighbors. Their modesty, attendance at the Baptist church, and strict appearance set them apart from others. However, behind this facade, there was a tragedy. Neighbors often heard screams and children crying, noticed bruises on children, but preferred not to interfere. A small one-story house on the corner of Herzen Street borders the neighboring busy road and railway tracks. This place can't be called quiet, but that's exactly how the house appears now, silent and abandoned. It is surprising that after what happened here in a couple of days, there was no police outfit, no elementary seal. And the door leading to the courtyard was ajar, and anyone could come in. The view, to put it mildly, is shocking. On the right side of the entrance, there is a sandbox with children's toys. The whole yard is generously strewn with them. It seems that children are very much loved here. It is worth turning left, and a terrible picture opens up. Dried blood splatters near the garage. Traces of dragging lead to a pink baby bath. It is filled with water, which is more like a thick scarlet syrup. There's blood in it too. According to the numerous traces of red splashes, it can be assumed that the children desperately resisted and received blows for their resistance. Step by step, blow by blow. It was impossible not to hear their screams under the open sky in broad daylight. The 14th of April, 2025 year, was an ordinary day in the city of Kansk, where the population slightly exceeds 85,000 people. Valentina sent 7-year-old Timofey to school, leaving 3 more children at home. When the boy came back, he was terrified. His older brother Mark was lying in the yard with terrible wounds. Timofey ran to his mother in a panic, but she silently took him to his grandparents. The pensioners lived in the next house. Only when Valentina burst into tears, and the boy, stuttering, told about what he saw, Valentina's parents realized that something terrible had happened. The woman's father immediately ran to the house. There was a terrible picture waiting for him. There is blood and butchered limbs of his 2 grandchildren and granddaughter all over the yard. The man immediately called the police and an ambulance and began to inspect the house. On one of the shelves of the sideboard, the grandfather found the severed head of one of his grandchildren, who was only 7 months old. When the criminologists arrived, even the operatives who had seen a lot were horrified. The victims were 2 boys 8 years and 7 months old, as well as a girl who was only 4 years old. During the investigation, it was established that the executioner in this brutal massacre was the own mother of 3 dead children, who at that moment was in a strange state. During the interrogation, the woman admitted that she could have gone even further, but something inside stopped her. "I think you have a question brewing, but where else?" Valentina stated that in addition to the trophy in the form of the head of her 7-month-old son, she planned to taste their flesh, but at some point refused to do so. 29-year-old Valentina Mitko began to behave strangely 2 years before the incident. Then she fell underground, hit her head hard, and couldn't walk for 3 days, and after that she started having mental problems. Valentina was hospitalized to be examined. But apart from inappropriate behavior, no changes were found. The woman told the doctors that she was the queen. Valentina's father told investigators that her mother loved her children very much and never offended them. At the time of the fall in the underground, she was 23 years old. Then Valentina Mitko left Kansk for Krasnoyarsk. Already here, she was detained by the police for starting to rush at local pensioners. The woman could not explain to law enforcement officers why she threw herself at grandmothers. She was hospitalized in a neuropsychiatric dispensary. After the treatment, she went back to Kansk. Then, allegedly, nothing strange was noticed in her behavior. A couple of weeks before the bloody day, Valentina's behavior became especially strange. Night walks out of the house, talking to yourself, an empty look. At the same time, she was still a victim. Husband Vladimir systematically raised his hand against her and the children. Vladimir Mitko was outwardly an ordinary driver, silent and uncommunicative. Within the walls of his house, a man turned into a tyrant. He could raise his hand against his spouse for the slightest offense, such as an unprepared dinner or a mess. Timofey got the most firm, the only surviving child. Valentina grew up fanatically believing in a large family, and all the closest relatives attended the Baptist church. Vali's mother is a strict and domineering woman. She kept the children in a tight grip, forbade them to use technology. There were no phones, computers, or televisions in the house. They lived half-starved. If the children ate in the morning, then it was impossible to even open the refrigerator anymore. Jam was a joy for them, only if someone treated them. The mother did not arrange holidays for the children. They did not celebrate birthdays, ignored the new year. There was not much money in the family. Adults did not work and survived on what grew in the garden. They didn't even turn on the lights in the house once again. They saved money. Valentina has a sister and 3 brothers, but none of them have talked to her lately. By the way, according to rumors, they all fled to Moscow from their parents and poverty, and now live normally. And another brother also has mental problems. Since Valia was the oldest, she got the most. She said that her mother often beat her. As a child, it was painful to look at her. She was afraid of everything. They scared her decently. Even then, many noticed that she had problems with her head. That's how Valentina grew up. Without friends, and, in fact, without family. As a result, she became a hermit, locked herself in. Sometimes she shared her experiences with her friends, told terrible things, which she then told reporters. Valentina met her husband in church. The marriage, according to the woman, was concluded against her will, as well as intimate relationships. And why did she give birth so much then? Yes, because the family lived according to the principle of as much as God willing, so much and we will give birth. However, her mother also lived. Since October 2024 year, Valentina's family has been put on preventive registration, after her husband was brought to administrative responsibility. Then they found large bruises on the son's body. Valentina did not hide how bad she felt. She said her husband was a tyrant. She claimed he was bullying her and the children. She endured and was silent, because the guardianship authorities and law enforcement agencies did not help her. Her husband, according to her, did not let her go anywhere, forbade her to leave the house. Neither she nor the children had a phone. My husband did not allow me to use the equipment. Valia complained that she did not finish eating because there was not much money. The spouse worked as a loader. In fact, Valentina did not have a normal life either as a child or later. The woman also did not arrange holidays for her children. Perhaps the influence of the mother or husband affected. Valentina did not have a permanent job and was engaged in housework. Neither Valentina, nor her husband, nor her parents have a page on social networks. Neighbors said that the children's mother behaved strangely, wore a headscarf and long skirts. On the street, she asked questions at random, did not come to parent meetings, and denied chats. When I heard about the murder, I immediately realized that Valia had done it. I saw her the other day. She was really bad, intimidated. Now everyone in Kansk is discussing this story, but few people know what kind of hell Valentina lived in. It's good to reason when you don't have all the information, the neighbor said. After the triple murder, the deputy prosecutor of the region noted that the service, which is obliged to monitor the safety of the family, worked inconsistently. It is noted that Valentine's unhealthy behavior was noticed back in the 24th year, during hospitalization, shortly before the last birth. In September, she was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. A woman who was in the same maternity hospital with Valentina in September told about the condition of the accused at that time. She said that something was immediately noticeable about the neighbor. She was talking to herself. In the ward, she shaved her legs and arms. At night, she tore toilet paper, asked strange questions. She said almost nothing about herself, only mentioned that she was carrying her 4th child. And after the birth, a terrible thing happened. She started talking to the breast pump, then her eyes widened and became bloodshot. In Kansk, investigators also opened a criminal case on the fact of negligence against persons of the prevention authorities. Family acquaintances claim that Valentina loved children. She was always silent. She didn't have an opinion. Her mother also goes to this sect, so Valia was raised with the idea that her role is to give birth and be silent, family friends shared. However, let's return with you to the moment when the crime occurred. The first to arrive at the scene of the massacre were not the police or neighbors. A 7-year-old boy returned home from school. On the threshold, he saw splashes of blood and the body of his 8-year-old brother. According to the investigative committee, a 29-year-old woman took her last child into the house and closed it. Later, she will say at the first interview that there is simply no strength left for a fourth child. A little later, his mother released him and took him to her grandparents. Already there, the woman burst into tears, and the boy confusingly tried to tell about the elder brother, hacked with an axe. Then the man ran into the house to see the shocking picture for himself. According to investigators, the eldest child of 8 years old was left lying in the tub, in which his mother hacked him. The bodies of a 4-year-old daughter and a 7-month-old boy were found in the room. And it was not possible to get at least some clear explanations from the woman. During the interrogation by the investigator, the suspect jumped from topic to topic, sometimes without even finishing the phrase. The only clear explanation is the method of reprisal. A 4-year-old girl was strangled by her mother. Her sons were hacked to death with an axe. Mitko's family was registered because of ill treatment. However, the inspector limited herself to a formal conversation with Vladimir, without checking Valentina's condition. Now she faces up to 7 years for negligence. This case revealed systemic problems. Social services often act formally, without delving into the real state of affairs in problem families, which then leads to such horrors. The neighbors were silent, the husband bullied for years. Social services were inactive. Here is the result. The father of the children did not believe that his wife could do such a thing. He was informed about the death by his wife's parents. He was screaming and hysterical. I just didn't believe that there were no more children. He asked me to take him home. He was crying, family friend Andriy shared. The surviving child told investigators that the father bullied them. And when the child was 3 years old, he broke his nose. When my brother and I played too loudly, Dad came and beat us, the surviving child gave such testimony. On the 18th of April, 2025 year, investigators detained the 40-year-old head of the family. In the case of torture, a criminal case has been opened against him. According to the investigation, the suspect systematically abused children during the summer of April 2000 of the 18th year, April 2000 of the 25th year, and the man, during the court session on the election of a preventive measure for him, asked to commute his sentence, so that he could say goodbye to his family. The detainee noted that he was not going to leave. Also during the court session, he began to cry, answering the question, what would he say to his wife if such a case presented itself? I forgive her everything. May God forgive her too. I love her. I don't think she is to blame for this, said the defendant in the criminal case. According to the man, he always tried to be a good family man, and he raised his hand to his wife when there was no order at home. And the children were screaming from hunger. On the 18th of April, 3 young children were said goodbye in the Krasnoyarsk territory. However, the funeral was rather strange. They buried everyone in one grave and without a cross. The bodies were taken from the morgue and immediately taken to the cemetery. They dug one hole and lowered 3 coffins into it. Apparently, the family did not have any money or saved money in order not to pay for the purchase of 3 graves. There were no commemorations, a local resident shared. Concerned residents of Kansk are raising funds to buy toys, sweets for the surviving child, and, if possible, open an account for help. At the trial for the election of a preventive measure of Valentina, it turned out that the woman separated the head of her 7-month-old son and put it in the sideboard to show her parents. At the trial, she behaved very strangely and answered the judge's questions with long pauses. She stated that she spoke a different language to one of the questions. The accused also asked how she could hide from the court. Valentina will have to undergo a psychiatric examination in Moscow. The investigative committee informs that the examination will be conducted at the Serbsky Center, after which, probably, she will be declared insane and released from criminal liability, after which she will be placed in a hospital for compulsory treatment. Timofey, who witnessed the death of his brothers and sisters, received a severe psychological trauma. The father wrote a refusal on him, and now the boy is waiting for an orphanage. Psychologists are sure that the consequences of this nightmare will remain with him for life. His future raises serious concerns. Will he ever be able to recover from the experience? On the 30th of July, 2023 year, a dirty, downtrodden woman stood on the threshold of the apartment of 35-year-old Elena. Through her tears, she said, "Sister." After a couple of seconds, the landlady realized that her younger sister Katya, who disappeared 14 years ago, was standing in front of her. Bars on the windows and a lock on the door. Inside, there is a small room with a bed, a bedside table, a desk, and a carpet on the wall. This place became a prison for 19-year-old Ekaterina from Chelyabinsk in the 2009 year. The girl met a certain Vladimir at the train station. He invited her to visit the village of Smolino and locked her in his house. Here the prisoner lived for 14 years. All this time, the maniac forced her to have sexual intercourse, beat her, and threatened to take her life. The atrocities took place in front of the perpetrator's mother and under the noses of neighbors, but no one reported to the police. Today, we will analyze in detail with you the story on which it would be possible to make a horror movie. 14 years of unbearable bullying. How did it happen that a young girl was chained up in a creepy house and lived in animal conditions? And why the maniac's mother was afraid to go to the police? A native of the Urals, Katya Balyankina is compared to the captives of the Skopinski maniac, Viktor Makhov. But if Ekaterina Martinova and Elena Semokina spent less than 4 years in the basement of their abductor, then Ekaterina was isolated from the world, in a private house in the village of Smolino for 14 years. Ekaterina Balyankina was born on the 15th of July, 1990. The early biography of Catherine cannot be called prosperous. Olga, Katya's mother, her brother and sisters drank heavily. Judging by the photo, Katya looks like her parent in her youth. In Olga's first marriage, a daughter Sveta and a son Andrei were born. The children lived and studied at the Chelyabinsk boarding school, where their mother worked as a laundress. After the divorce, the woman remarried and gave birth to 2 more daughters from Alexander's second spouse, Lena and Katya. In addition to drunken parents, the younger sister's childhood was accompanied by scandals, overnight stays in the house of random guests, and the arrival of visitors demanding repayment of debts and threatening violence. Lena and Katya also studied at boarding school for a couple of years, and in the 2000th year, Mom sent her youngest daughter to a regular school. The girl's intelligence corresponded to the norm, but she differed from her peers in small stature and lameness. One leg was shorter than the other. A year after Katya's transfer to a regular school, Olga and Alexander were deprived of their parental rights, and the future prisoner Cheskidova, as well as her sister Lena, were taken first to a rehabilitation center, and then to an orphanage. Subsequently, the girl's parents died, according to doctors, of a heart attack. In the orphanage, Katya was quiet and withdrawn. She was considered a slave girl, obeying the decision of the leader. Like most graduates of orphanages, Balyankina became a student of vocational school. After coming of age, the Ural Thumalina settled in a communal apartment on Derbent Street in Chelyabinsk, where her sister Lena already lived with her young son. The sister's neighbor was an elderly local resident who suffered from a disorder of collecting unnecessary things and littered the common areas with things brought from the trash. Katya often visited her uncle Anatoly Fedotov. The man claims that the niece left without fear with men who offered to treat her with beer and chips. Why wasn't the prisoner found during this time? Her friends say they didn't look for much. Only her own sister made attempts, contacted the police, and the others immediately thought Katya was killed. She was a free bird, without a sense of fear. I often saw her with beer and different men much older. And since she was hanging out like that, then one could expect a bad result. She lived with me for a while. One day we were leaving the house, there was a man standing, his face was drunk. She left with him. So we thought that, most likely, it was used and sprinkled, said Ekaterina's uncle. In the 2009 year, a 19-year-old girl at the Synagurai bus station in Chelyabinsk met a 37-year-old man. They got to talking. He offered her alcohol, and then invited her to visit. The girl agreed, and went to Smolino, where they spent some time together. But when Ekaterina was about to leave, the owner suddenly took out a knife. He put a gun to her throat and said she wasn't going anywhere, and then locked her in a room, At that moment, Catherine had no idea that she would spend the next 14 years in tar. Katya's uncle and sister filed a report on the disappearance of a relative, but over time, they considered that the gullible girl was no longer alive. But with small potatoes, short haircut. She wasn't very sociable. The Cheskadov house was divided into two parts. Vladimir's parents lived in one of them. The father was a bedridden patient, and a couple of years after Katya appeared in Smolin, he died, and in another, the maniac himself and his young captive. Vladimir has equipped a separate room for Katya's life. When rare visitors came to the Cheskadov's house, as well as during sexual pleasures, the girl's hands and feet were chained to the floor, and her head was covered with a special box so that no one could hear the screams of the captive. The maniac himself rarely left the house. Vladimir's mother Valentina Cheskadova, unlike her son, led an active social life, had girlfriends, went not only to shops, but also to concerts and to church. The pensioner claims that before her eyes, the offspring never offended Katya, built relationships with the captive, as with his beloved wife. And in general, the girl lived with them in the position of a queen. It did not work, but it was provided with everything necessary. That's what the woman said. Mom, local men remember well. At first, she worked in a psychiatric hospital, and then she sold glasses. Aunt Valia is a kind-hearted person. She left the house in the morning, and returned late. Very positive, joyful. Almost no one saw her son. He rarely left the house. The guy was unsociable. Yes, he had some problems out of his head. He always wore a hood over his head, a neighbor said. The house that became the place of the girl's imprisonment is an ordinary old one, with wooden shutters on the windows, blue gates, and a roof that, obviously, has not been changed or repaired for a long time. To the left of the main entrance was a garage with the same blue gate. The yard is small, clotheslines, a couple of basins, bricks, and an old wooden staircase, doors to the porch and garage, wide open. On the steps leading to the house, there is a rug and a strange black package. Everything looks unkempt and even abandoned. Part of the grass grew twice, the pile is crumbling. The house itself has long been painted blue, and the door is green. Living in captivity, Catherine could only occasionally leave the room. She helped around the house and took care of Vladimir's mother. The woman told the police that recently the kidnapper began to drink too much. As a result, health problems, including mental ones. The man began to threaten not only her, but also her mother. Then an elderly woman called a team of doctors, and he was taken away. He didn't have time to close the door to his victim's room. Ekaterina heard the words from the mother of the maniac, "Run, there will be no other chance." The victim said when they were already waiting for an ambulance, the woman came up to her and said, "Here's your money, go home. You probably have already been lost." In 2023 year, Catherine was already 33 years old. After the experience, she does not remember the contacts of relatives. Only the address of the sister, where she ran. For all 14 years, Catherine was held captive just 10 kilometers from her home. On the opposite shore of Smolina Lake, Katya came to her sister Lena, who no longer expected to see her younger sister alive. And the Chelyabinsk women together wrote a statement to the police. Vladimir and Valentina were detained, but the pensioner was released on her own reconnaissance before the court decision. However, detectives managed to establish that Ekaterina is not the only victim. At the turn of 2000 of the 10th and 11th year, a man lured another girl to him, older and larger than Balyankina. And when she tried to fight back, he killed her. But the investigators found out about this only after questioning Ekaterina. Later, buried human remains were found on the territory. According to Ekaterina, in the first year of captivity, there was another woman in the house with her Oksana. Vladimir kept her on a leash in the barn. The woman also met a man at the train station. Probably, according to the same scheme, he invited her to his house for a drink. The girl could not get out anymore. In the summer of 2000 of the 11th year, he drove a knife into Oksana's head with one blow, after which he brought Ekaterina and finished off the victim in front of her eyes, striking 2 strong blows on the head with a crowbar. After that, Vladimir hid the body in a barrel and unsuccessfully tried to burn it, and then cut up and put the remains in the basement. What Vladimir did with them afterwards, Ekaterina did not know. Later, criminologists will be able to make an artistic portrait of the victim. However, they are still unable to establish the identity and find her relatives. Law enforcement officers have begun to conduct operational and investigative measures. aimed at establishing the possible involvement of the suspect in other crimes. There may be more victims, but so far the remains of only one person have been found. The maniac was detained right in a psychiatric hospital, where his mother sent him. Vladimir Cheskadov was born on the 21st of July, 1972 year. Since childhood, he lived in Chelyabinsk in the village of Smolino. There, on Festivalnaya Street, there is a small wooden house, which still terrifies all the locals. Everything seemed to be fine, but I just couldn't make friends. According to the stories of friends, the boy has always been a closed loner. I never called my comrades to my house. Allegedly mom and dad are fighting. He graduated from 10 grades of school, and then stepped on a crooked path, in 1986 year, as a 17-year-old teenager. He was tried for robbery. Some neighbors knew that he was suffering from a mental illness, but they did not notice anything dangerous in his behavior. After being released, he returned home to Smolino again, and practically did not communicate with anyone. However, he managed to meet a girl and marry her. What went wrong, and where his wife disappeared, is unknown. According to Vladimir's mother, she lives in Yekaterinburg. The couple has no children. Investigators have to find out if the spouse is another victim of a maniac. His mother's friend did not know that he was serving a sentence, but she recalled how one day a man gave her an icon. It was one of the ones bought during a trip to church and liked Nadezhda Ivanovna. Now the suspect behaved strangely, the neighbor says. He could talk about one thing and then abruptly change the subject. According to her, Vladimir was quiet, unsociable. His father is dead. An elderly man worked as an engineer in a boiler room. Vladimir himself did not work, they lived on their mother's pension. And presumably on the money from renting an apartment in Chelyabinsk. There was also a small income from trading glasses. Mother was selling from a table to passers-by. One of the residents of the village of Smolina recalls that Vladimir's mother once mentioned that everything was fine with him, and he allegedly lives with a girl, which alerted the locals. In general, Valentina told little about her son, and some residents of the village assumed that Vladimir's happy life was an invention of an elderly woman. Cheskadov's private house, where the captives were kept, is very cluttered. At the same time, as the investigators of the rubble note, no alcohol bottles were found there. He rarely drank alcohol. Moreover, the security forces who worked with him call him a rather intelligent person. My sister was looking for Katya, contacted the police several times. First in the year 2009, when Catherine disappeared. Then she was put on the wanted list, but the search did not yield results. Then, in the 2018 year, the girl's sister needed a certificate stating that a relative was missing. For registration of property rights to real estate. At that time there was no daughter-in-law from the missing one. It is noteworthy that Katya officially began to be considered missing only after 2000 of the 18th year. Which means that either her sister did not write a statement, or she was lost. According to the victim, when Vladimir left the house, he locked her in the room with a key, and sometimes tied her to the countertop. The rest of the time, she moved freely around the house, helping his elderly mother with cleaning and cooking. After a long time, Vladimir regularly entered into sexual intercourse with the victim without the use of violence and threats. Ekaterina said that Vladimir subjected her to systematic torture, the cause of which was minor domestic reasons. According to the statements of the captive, for 14 years of being in the lair of a maniac, Vladimir abused her about 1,000 times. But many wondered why Ekaterina did not get pregnant and questioned her words about the abuse. Later, the maniac himself stated at the trial that he did not force the captive to act, but simply lived with her. After the escape, Balyankina was placed in a rehabilitation center to provide psychological assistance. As for the possible punishment for other episodes, it is possible that instead of a term behind bars, Vladimir may go for compulsory treatment. Psychiatrists will have to assess the degree of his sanity. Perhaps the notebooks full of notes found during the search will help them in this. Their content will be carefully studied by experts. Vladimir is now 52 years old. He looks older. Sullen facial expression, lots of wrinkles, sparse hair, visible bald spot. On the 29th of July, the court held hearings with the participation of witnesses. The meeting was held behind closed doors. 72-year-old Valentina Cheskadova was charged with kidnapping. The investigation proves that she helped her son to keep Ekaterina and Oksana. Valentina Andreevna Cheskadova told the court about herself the following. 72 years old, she was born in the Sotka district. I graduated from the Sotka Medical School as a paramedic, a widow. The husband died 6 years ago, the woman told the court. I have one son, he is 52, has no previous criminal record. She also told reporters in response to a question about the abduction. Katya lived with us of her own free will, all our doors were open, she could leave at any moment. The stepmother is reasoning. The fact that he took his life, he will be responsible for it, even though he is mentally ill, even if he is not sick. And then she assures me that she was not aware of this. And I didn't see what was happening behind the door of Vladimir and Katya's room. He didn't hit her in front of me. I went out every day on business. They're both homebodies. Unpretentious. Buckwheat will be thrown into a saucepan, so they will eat it. Yes, they will drink water. Their diet was like this. They laughed a lot. We lived, one might say, soul to soul. I can't say anything bad about Katya. The girl is not drinking, not smoking. She and my son didn't even drink on holidays, the woman recalls. At the birthday of the so-called daughter-in-law, she bought treats and gifts. The last time I gave a dress and shampoo. And so they lived. The maniac's mother should also be sent to the hospital for a forensic psychiatric examination. But there is no place there yet, and the woman is waiting for her turn. He lives quietly at home, goes to church. It was also found that one of the neighbors went into the same house to fix the pipes. However, he did not notice anything strange, except for a terribly polluted house. At the time of the creation of this video, the trial of the maniac continues. Another question that many are asking. Why couldn't the prisoner escape after so many years? There are several reasons. During the search, the security forces found a special structure in the house, to which Catherine was constantly tied, including gagging. And yes, there were indeed blind bars on the windows of the room where she was kept. In all these years, she was released into the street 2 or 3 times, no further than the garden. When he left, he tied her to a makeshift structure made of boards and bars. Taped her mouth shut. And that's it. If he was at home, he spent almost all the time with her, playing chess. He is a good chess player, went to chess school, the investigator said. Theoretically, Ekaterina had the opportunity to escape before, the security forces argue. Why she didn't do it, the question is rather to psychologists. Perhaps the Stockholm Syndrome worked, or maybe the fear was too strong. According to the maniac mother, Ekaterina was homeless and voluntarily stayed in their house, where she had free food and a roof over her head. And when she realized that she wanted to live differently, she ran away and began to say that she was held by force. The proceedings in this case will continue for more than 1 year. What do you think really happened in this story? Did the girl stay voluntarily, or was she held by force? What can make a person commit such a terrible crime as kidnapping a child? How to explain that a 12-year-old girl is chained up in the basement like an animal? Today we are going to discuss with you a story that shocked the whole country. In the summer of 2021 year, a child disappeared. A 12-year-old schoolgirl who went for a bike ride and did not return home. Anya became a victim of a maniac. He put the girl in a bag, brought her home, and put her on a chain. What prompted him to do this and what happened to the child? The parents were very concerned and contacted the police. As a result, a large-scale search was organized, in which the kidnapper himself took part. He knew exactly where the girl was and kept her in the basement of his house. Even after years of working in this field, such stories still cause me a feeling of horror. I would be grateful for your like and any comment that will help promote this video. You do not like a terrible story, but for my work on this video for you. On the 31st of July, 2021 year, in one of the small Selby district, it became known about the disappearance of a schoolgirl Anya. The girl went for a bike ride in the village where her family had a dacha, but neither in the evening nor at night did she return. The parents contacted the police, and not only relatives and law enforcement agencies, but also local residents were involved in the search. They united around this disaster with great enthusiasm. There are dense forests around Little Yenisei, and a river flows nearby. Various versions were considered during the search. Got lost more often. Drowned. Periodically, finds were found indicating that the girl could really have drowned. For example, a phone and clothes were found on the shore. There was a bicycle lying not far from this place. Only later it turned out that these things were planted by her abductor. It turned out to be 40-year-old Oleg Lavkin, who lived in seclusion, communicating only with his mother and daughter. He rarely greeted the locals, was sullen, and if he exchanged a few words, it was only for work. Lavkin was engaged in the collection of scrap metal and its subsequent sale. In the yard of his house, there were mountains of junk, a broken bicycle, a refrigerator, various wires and metal parts. The house itself was like an impregnable fortress. On one side, there are thick weeds as high as windows, on the other side, there are fences built of anything. Lavkin also fenced himself off from his neighbors with an iron wall, and was categorically opposed to someone else's foot stepping on his plot. Such moments, as the locals told, he started shouting that this was his private territory, and no one had the right to enter it. Such emotionality can be explained. Lavkin had something to hide. As his neighbor later told him, a few years before the abduction, he was digging a basement on the territory of his own house. It was in this basement, later, that he kept an underage girl chained up. He was a real recluse, he didn't communicate with anyone. If you greet him, he will respond in kind, and if you remain silent, he will pass by without even looking up. A strange type, to be honest, on his own mind, said one of the neighbors of the man. It seemed that the neighbor was trying to remain unnoticed. He built high walls, not only between himself and others, but also around his house. From whatever side you look at his hut, there is iron everywhere. And who knows what's going on inside this fortress? Lavkin's house looks more like an abandoned one. It's hard to believe that someone still lives here. Half-boarded-up window, tall weeds, moss-covered slate on the roof. In the courtyard, the picture is not the best. Behind the house, there is a decent-sized vegetable garden, and right behind the plantings, there is a cemetery. To be honest, just looking at this semblance of a dwelling becomes creepy. At first, the investigation suggested that the predator could have been tracking its prey for a month before attacking. But this version has not found direct evidence. Later, Lavkin said that he attacked the girl spontaneously. However, at the very first interrogation, the criminal said that he often saw this girl, but was afraid to do anything with her. In the steam room, he dug a hole about 2 meters deep, allegedly for storing pickles, which was illogical. Since he had a basement in the house for this purpose, the senior investigator said. The criminal threatened the girl with violence if she tried to escape. He had a tendency to sadism. Forcing a defenseless child to obey himself, he satisfied his sexual needs. And there was really no goal to take the prisoner's life. The kidnapper wanted to keep her in sexual slavery. The girl interested him with her strong character, did not cry, did not call for help, followed all his instructions. Gradually, without showing active aggression, Lavkin tried to win her over in order to commit sexual crimes against her in the future. He told the girl a lot about his life. He is quite a well-read person. He lived in Moscow for a long time, the investigator says. Oleg Lavkin was married, he has a daughter, but due to constant business trips, the family broke up. I didn't feel any particularly positive moments in my family life. We divorced peacefully. For the child, they then created the appearance of a family until she grew up. I always tried to bring her gifts from trips. The criminal spoke about his daughter with special warmth. Lavkin was not alone in the house. His adult daughter has been living with him for the last couple of years. The girl knew from the very beginning about the captive in the bath, but did not tell the law enforcement officers, fearing that the sadistic father would do something to her or the child. After the first night, Lavkin transferred the girl from the steam room to the basement of the house, which is located in the farthest corner. According to the kidnapper, it will be harder to find her this way. There he has already committed with the child what is then qualified as other sexual acts. And Lavkin's daughter was at home at that time. He approached her, confessed that he had stolen the girl. He told me that she was in the basement. I asked my daughter to see that the hostage did not scream and did not run away. Irina begged the father to let the child go, but he categorically refused and threatened that he would take his own life. And the girl, if she tells anyone about what happened. Irina was scared, she was crying, but because of fear she did nothing. Lavkin covered his tracks and returned. At home, he asked his daughter to cook the girl a meal. She fried eggs and poured soda. After that, Lavkin again placed the schoolgirl in the basement and he went to his mother's bath. Leaving, the criminal said that he would be gone for 2 or 3 hours. He is going to the Altai Republic to see if there is a cedar cone. Yes, it sounds scary. He kept it on a chain. In fact, everything was much softer. I treated the girl like a human being, fed her, did not hold her for a long time. I struggled with myself. We talked a lot. She gave me such dialogues. Like, I crossed a moral line. Smart girl. I said I couldn't let her go because my life would be ruined and I'd go to jail. She promised not to say anything to anyone, but we both understood that this was not the case. The convict is justified. At night, Lavkin and a schoolgirl spent in the basement of the house. He carefully threw mattresses and sofa upholstery there. The next morning, Irina went with her boyfriend and girlfriend to the river, and the kidnapper was left alone with the victim. On the day of her disappearance, the girl went cycling along a rural road. At that moment, a maniac, Oleg Lavkin, was driving by on a red motorblock. He pushed the child off the bike, tied him up, put him in a bag, and loaded him into his transport. After that, he drove the victim to his house, chained him up in the basement, and locked him up. He threatened his victim with violence if she tried to escape. Of course, the girl was scared. At first, it was unknown why the criminal needed the girl. In general, many at first recalled the story of the Skopinski maniac, who in the 2000th year kidnapped 2 girls of 14 and 17 years old, and forced them to have sexual intercourse for almost 4 years in his basement. There is a more detailed history of it on my channel. After the abduction, Lavkin joined the search for the girl, planted her personal belongings to stage a drowning. When the bike was found missing, on which there was paint from the tillers, the police immediately went home to a colleague. I expected the police to come with a search. Anya and I hid under the floor. The girl did not scream. The convict recalls the events of that terrible day. And the criminal also said that he did not abuse the schoolgirl. However, the investigation proved that during the period of being with the girl in a tight space, he committed sexual acts against her. From that moment on, everything didn't go according to his plan. He was very scared and began to panic, worried that he would be caught. Therefore, on the night of the 2nd of August, he decided to let the girl go, and he went on the run. Meanwhile, the child ran safely to her parents and told them where she had been all this time. The man was put on the federal wanted list. An orientation was made for him. Here are the signs by which they were looking for him. He looks 35 or 45 years old. Height 175 centimeters. Dark brown hair, short, slim build, wearing glasses. He was dressed in a green camouflage suit, a jacket with a hood and an anti-mosquito net, and carried a khaki backpack with blue shoes. As it was established, the man was previously convicted. Lavkin Oleg Igorovich was born in the village of Malo Yeniseiskaya in 1981st year. According to the stories of friends, as a child, he was a calm, non-aggressive child, studied average. However, the child was greatly affected by the quarrels of the parents. The boy's family was full, but the adults drank heavily and often arranged a showdown. Little Oleg always wanted to run away from home at such moments. He was not the only child in the family. Lavkin has an older brother. When the boy turned 16, his father left the family. The mother was left alone to raise her youngest son. After passing a medical examination, he later joined the army. After being demobilized, he decided that he wanted to continue his life in Moscow, where he went for a long 11 years. However, he could not find himself there. Renting housing, buying groceries, and other expenses, which Oleg could not cope with, forced the man to move back to his mother. However, over the years of his stay in the capital, the future maniac managed to get married and have a child. After returning to his native village, Lavkin could not get a normal job, and later received a short sentence for distributing prohibited substances. Officially, Oleg did not work anywhere. It was only after the deadline that I decided to do something of my own, collect and sell metal. It didn't bring much money, but it was enough for some products, and there was a roof over my head. For what reason is unknown, but over time, Oleg's daughter began to live with him. At first glance, Lavkin's mother could not be more than 65 years old. This is an active woman, who at her age, drives a car herself, cultivated a large vegetable garden, and supported not only her granddaughter, the daughter of the accused, but also himself. She is very well known in the village, and no one has ever said anything good about her. One local grandmother said that she raised not only her own children, but also took care of strangers. It's hard to imagine what's going on in her mother's heart right now. There were a huge number of people at the place of search for the missing girl. representatives of services for at least 150 people. There were special groups, divers, dog handlers who came and went. The local population is about 200 people. The fact that so many people came there, and the fact that this search acquired a resonant status, and became one of the reasons why the criminal released the child. Roughly speaking, he was scared by the scale of the whole event. He realized that he would not be able to hide for a long time. Lavkin, who previously often went into the dense forest to collect medicinal herbs and cones, went by devious ways to the neighboring Republic of Altai. For almost 2 weeks he managed to hide from law enforcement. He was very vigilant and stayed away from populated areas, but one day he decided to swim in the river, where he was noticed by local fishermen. Active search activities lasted for more than 10 days. Reports that a man similar in signs to Oleg Lavkin was seen in the village of Korota in the Anguday district near the river were received by the police from a vigilant 36-year-old local resident, then told the Republican police headquarters. And later it was reported that he was seen in the grocery store. He was weak, hungry, went to the grocery store, and thereby gave himself away. The vigilance of local residents contributed to his detention, the investigator said. When the suspect was detained by the police, the kidnapper Oleg Lavkin introduced himself with a false name and said that he had come to the Republic allegedly to collect nuts, but a photo of orientations brought him to clean water. By the way, his passport was also found in Lavkin's belongings. Then there was no doubt about the man's identity. From the moment of detention, the accused was in jail, admitted his guilt at the first interrogation, and cooperated with the investigation. During the investigation of the criminal case, it turned out that earlier a man had seduced a 13-year-old girl, who was under the guardianship of his mother. In the 2018 year, the mother of the accused sheltered a teenager who was left without parents. At first, the man and the girl just talked. Then he began to molest her and filmed adult videos with her, which he later published on the internet. On this he earned about 6,000 rubles. According to the man, he gave almost the entire amount to the girl and left only a small percentage in the 2020 year. When the teenager turned 18, he tied her up and abused her. During the examination, the diagnosis was not confirmed, but a tendency to sadism was established. Having collected enough evidence, in September of the 22nd year, the investigators took the case to court. As told in the press service of the prosecutor's office of the Altai territory, court hearings on the case were already underway. They were held in a closed format, as the case concerned an underage girl. The details of the court sessions were almost not made public. On September 29, Oleg Lavkin, the abductor of a schoolgirl, was sentenced in the Altai territory for kidnapping a 12-year-old girl, threatening to kill her, as well as violent acts of a sexual nature. In relation to another victim, he received 20 years of imprisonment in a high-security colony. A year after the verdict, journalists came to the colony to interview the criminal. During this time, he wilted a lot, lost weight. Life in the colony and the severity of the crime take their toll. My daughter does not communicate with me, the convict said. Because of all these events of information noise and general condemnation for my act, the daughter suffered. In the village, everyone was pointing at her. She had to move. A loved one left her, said that he did not need such genetics. My daughter went to a psychologist later. Now she has a different life and a different young man. Do you miss your daughter? The journalist asked. Yes, I had a good relationship with my daughter. They were important to me. But it turned out that these relationships no longer exist. Did you call her? Yes, he called. The conversation didn't work out. Communicating only with mom. It is allowed to call 4 times a month. I call, we exchange letters. That's it. I had a short date with my mother in the pretrial detention center. For a long time, maybe in the summer he will come. Our conversation is mainly about God, love, repentance. We are not discussing what happened. And so a big disaster visited not only the victim's family, but also ours. The criminal said that in Moscow he worked in the security service. He studied different religions. Closer to the age of 40, he returned to the Altai territory. He began to walk in the mountains, met with residents of eco-settlements. Then he took up metal, melted down, made machines, became interested in 3D animation, modeling, created games. I studied every case thoroughly. The maniac told journalists little about her childhood. He didn't have many friends. The village was small. The cellar in the house was dug for almost 2 years, but according to his own statements, not for such use, which many do not believe. What made Oleg Lavkin bring so much trouble to young girls? What is the main motive of the crime? It is known that he spoke to the victim about some grandiose project. Lavkin voiced his daughter's desire to create a new world with the kidnapped girl to raise her. However, he did not have a direct answer to the journalist's similar question. There was a definite goal. You see, if I start talking, it will be overgrown with new articles and a deadline. It will turn out that I will never get out of here. I'll be free in 20 years, then maybe I'll tell you. After that, the convict smiled maliciously. The criminal also described the first hours of the abduction of 12-year-old Anya. When I put her in the bag, her bicycle and mobile phone were left abandoned in place. I said, "Girls, damn, there are clues lying there. I need to remove them urgently." I didn't have any prepared premises so that she wouldn't escape. All that was at hand from some methods of retention is a chain. I asked her to be patient for literally a couple of hours while I drive, removing evidence. I gave her warm blankets so she wouldn't freeze, and went. The girl was in an ordinary cellar. This is not some kind of specialized basement of a maniac with video surveillance and other things. This is how the convict tried to explain his atrocities. It's scary to think that such people can be released. Do you think a criminal is capable of changing in 20 years spent in prison?